Welcome to another episode of the Afikra podcast. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today on the series, we have the artist, the very distinguished artist, Sliman Mansour, who is one of the most renowned artists from Palestine. Born in 1947, Sliman's work has become iconic. His credentials are extensive. His work has been shown all over the world. And it is my absolute honor to welcome him to afikra. Ustaz Sliman, welcome to afikra.
Thank you, Mikey. Thank you. I'm proud to be here, actually. Thank you.
No, I've been a fan of your work, and I have been moved by your work for decades. And so it is a real honor to be able to speak to you about your art and your life.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, I want to start out with some of your childhood. You were born in 1947, a year before the Nakba. And yes. I want to ask you, what do you remember of your teenage years? You're in the 40s and 50s and early 60s. What do you remember about growing up in Palestine at that time?
Where somebody was grown up, it affects his art very much. So my childhood affected my art a lot. I spent my childhood in around Birzeit. Birzeit was a small town, Christian and Muslim town. And it has lots of olive trees around it. You can tell from the name of the village.
Yeah, of course.
And also natural springs where we used to play and to swim and so on. So it was a beautiful place to grow in as a child. And
did you? Sorry, tfaddal, please go ahead.
But my father died when I was very young. So my family sent me to a boarding school in Beit Jala and Bethlehem. And there I spent most of my childhood, except in summer I used to go to Birzeit back. But during this time in the school, the teacher who was responsible for the boarding section, he was a German artist. So he took care of me. He noticed that I like to paint and to draw and so on. So he took care of me. He showed me books and he gave me materials and so on. And he encouraged me to participate in, for example, a competition that was done by the United Nations for the children of the world. That was in 1962. And I participated in that competition, and I won a prize there at that time. And they put my painting on the cover of the catalog. And they gave me $200 in 1962. That was a fortune.
Yeah.
So with all this fame and with all this money, people started to respect me and to respect my ability to paint, my love, my passion for painting.
Was painting your first love, or I saw a picture of you as a young boy doing pottery, but was painting immediately your first love as an artist?
It's like, yes, I remember I used to help my grandmother doing things. As an artist, I love to make things with my hands. And if I have the opportunity to work, to play with my grandmother, to make things in clay in summer and play with the water and with the mud, that was also very nice. I did that. And of course, in the school also, they gave us some courses in clay making.
Yeah.
But my first passion was drawing and painting.
I want to ask you a little bit about the phases of your work. I have lots of questions about your biography, but the phase of your work, one of your most iconic paintings is this from 1974, the Camel of Hardships. When you see that painting, do you think of the 1970s? Is it obvious to you that this is your work from the 70s and not your work from today? Are there artistic things going on here that you say, yeah, this is how I felt in the 70s, this is how I painted in the 70s, and this is what I was going through?
I don't think I changed a lot, you know. Maybe the change that happened with me is that I became older. My sight has been not so good as before. and I don't have the patience to do detailed things like I used to do. So that's the only difference. But I still love this kind of painting. And whenever I can, I do it. And also the situation that we live in, it didn't change, you know. It's still occupation. And it's still the same things that happened at that time. It's happening until now.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that will give me, you know, like new ideas or something. On the contrary, I always have new ideas through the occupation, like the war, like the confiscating of land, the prisoners. All my ideas come from the occupation.
Can you tell me a little bit? Yeah, sorry.
You know, I don't like that a lot, you know, but that's how we live here, and I feel like I have to reflect that in my art.
Yeah. When you were a kid, who were some of your favorite artists? I mean, if you think about in the 60s, if I was speaking to you in 1967, if I was speaking to you, you would be 20 years old, and I asked you, who are your favorite artists? Who would you say?
Look, I told you about this German teacher.
Yeah.
And he showed me books. He showed me a film about a German artist from the Renaissance called Albrecht Dürer. And I loved that artist for a long time. I tried to do like he did. And he showed us many artwork from the Renaissance. But later I saw Ismail Shammout work. In 1966, I think I was visiting Damascus. I have an uncle there. And in the fair that they do yearly in Damascus, there was an exhibition of Ismail Shammout, and I couldn't leave it. I spent all my time in Damascus sitting in that exhibition. So Ismail Shammout was a big effect on me at that time.
Yeah.
And later he became a good friend of mine also.
Can you tell me a little bit about the effort to try to build a movement around Palestinian artists in the 70s, and what that was like, trying to do exhibitions in Beirut and trying to do exhibitions in Italy and all over the world. What was that like at that time?
It was, I think, in 1971, that was the first exhibition that happened in Jerusalem. And this exhibition attracted a lot of people who were interested in art. So we started to meet each other, the artists, and we discovered that there are about 18, 19 artists living in the West Bank and Gaza. So we immediately became friends, and we decided to make like a group or a union, and of course the Israelis, they refused our permission to give us permission to work as a union, and then but we went on and did our first exhibition in 1975. This exhibition, many people saw it, and they invited us to show it in Jordan, in Amman. And from Jordan, somebody saw it, and they invited us to do it in London, in Britain, 1976. And then we were invited to do it in the United States, like a touring exhibit in many places. And we did it in 1977 in the United States. And since then, we became well-known. I mean, people started calling us from Germany, from Italy, from Japan, and so on, to do exhibitions there about our situation here. And we were generous enough to send exhibitions, you know. Although now thinking about it, it was a bad move because a lot of these exhibitions that we sent to places like Italy and Germany and Japan, it never came back for many reasons.
Yeah.
But we lost lots of work.
Do you feel like do you look back at that time almost like you were naive that all these people who were coming to the exhibitions and were organizing them, that they were going to take care of your work? Because I've heard those stories that you know, some of the most iconic pieces have vanished.
Yeah.
I mean, like this one, the Camel of Hardships. This piece, you don't have this piece anymore, right?
No, the first edition, I don't have it.
Like what happened to that?
The people who decided to print it as a poster in 1975, they told me they need the original work to photograph it and do it like a good poster. They took the original work, and I never saw it after that. So they kept it, and then they gave me, they told me they want to buy it. They gave me some checks, and I checked only one of them, and the others, they didn't go through. Anyway, this is a small example of our naivety.
Yeah,
I think I'm still, and we are still naive enough to, because we are still cooperating with people around in the world. We are sending artworks. I think naivety is in nature, and not only in us. It's in a lot of Palestinian people, you know.
you know, it's a heartbreaking story. So what advice would you give yourself going back, you know, if you were to speak to yourself in the 70s, what advice would you have given to yourself back then?
Of course, to be more careful.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't advise myself not to participate, because this participation, they were very, very important for the whole world to know about Palestinian art under occupation. So you have to pay a price for that.
Yeah.
And the price was very hard, was very heavy for us, you know, losing all these works. But the most heavy price, we paid it in Beirut, because we used to send artwork to the Union of Palestinian Artists, who was in Beirut, Ismail Shammout, because they needed our participation in exhibitions they did in the Soviet Union and the world here and there.
Yeah.
And when the war happened in 1982, they told us that the headquarters of the Union was bombed and all the paintings were destroyed. of course, we knew later that that was a big lie, because every now and then a painting is found here and there, either it's sold on Christie's or whatever, you know. And there are about 40 paintings in Tehran also. They are in the Museum of Tehran that were given through the Palestinian Artists Union to Tehran to make an exhibition. And then we can't get them back.
Yeah.
For bureaucratic reasons only.
When you were working in the 70s, if I were speaking to you then and I said, are you making political art? Are you a revolutionary? Are you engaged in the protest movement? Would you have said, yeah, of course I am. Of course I am. Or would you say, no, I am just painting the life that I see? What would you have said?
I would have said that I'm painting, I'm reflecting what my life. I never considered myself as a political artist, and I never was affiliated with any political party. So it was like it's. I thought it is a kind of silly, you know, that I'm painting flowers and I'm living under occupation. It doesn't fit. And also in 1981, we were called by the military authorities in Ramallah, from the Israeli military authorities, and they started arguing with us, me and another two friends, that why are we doing the political art? So we should do like a nice woman, a nude figure, or flowers, and they will buy from us that kind of art. So from that time, I like to paint flowers and I like to paint nice women. But whenever I want to do it, I remember that conversation, and I don't do it.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy story. I want to talk about that moment specifically. Can you tell me the story about you being told not to paint the flag? 1970, 1980, something like that?
Yes, that was in 1980. I had an exhibition in Ramallah. We opened the gallery in Ramallah, this group of Palestinian artists under occupation. And I had an exhibition in that gallery. It lasted only 3 hours. And then they came and closed the gallery, took the keys, and went away. And after like 1 month, they called us, me and my two friends who own the gallery. And they started interrogating or discussing art and life with us, including why are we painting political paintings, why not flowers and so on. And then they told us that there is a law that we are not allowed to paint in red, green, black, and white. These are the colors of the Palestinian flag. It seems they have a law that the Palestinian flag was forbidden. So also the colors of the Palestinian flag are forbidden. And we as artists, we can't paint in these colors. A friend of us who was sitting there, Assam, he started arguing with the man. And he asked him, if I make a flower as you want, but with these colors, what will you do? So the soldier was angry and he said, listen, if you make a watermelon, we will confiscate it. We will take it. So don't do that. Don't do anything in these colors. Also at that time, they forbade us to make any exhibition in the West Bank and Gaza in the occupied territories unless we we present our work for the military censorship, and we take permission from them to show this work. So it was really very hard for us to show our work in the West Bank and Ramallah. We had only place like the universities to make our exhibitions, and municipalities, the library of the municipality. But there was no infrastructure for art, like museums or galleries or whatever.
Yeah. During the First Intifada, you participated in a boycott against some of the sort of art supplies, and you started working with mud. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, in the First Intifada, the philosophy of that Intifada was to rely on ourselves, that we should try to eat from whatever we produce, we plant, and we eat from that. We even to smoke from our companies that make cigarettes.
Everything.
Everything. and I started to smoke from that cigarettes, and until now I have bad effect in my chest.
But it was a patriotic effect.
But anyway, and then I started to think, alone. I didn't discuss this with any of my friends, that if this is the philosophy of the Intifada, so why don't we, as artists, we do the same? Why should we buy art material from Israeli shops and then paint against Israel and against the occupation? There's something not nice in this circle. So why shouldn't we search for the natural materials from around us to do this kind of art? And then I came back to my grandmother when I was helping her with. She was doing for the bees, like bee hives from mud, like a barrel with a small hole in it. And I remembered that work with her, and immediately I started to search for the material for we call it a special name, this kind of earth.
Yeah.
And hay, and I started to do my art. And in the beginning, always it cracks. But in the beginning, I didn't like the cracks. So I spent a lot of time trying to hide them, to fill them, and to not to show them anymore. But later I discovered the beauty of the cracking, and I thought it reflects also the fragmentation of the Palestinian geography, with all the after 2000, with all the checkpoints and so on. So the geography was fragmented, and I thought the cracks in the mud that I was doing also reflect that. Also, it reflected politically also our situation under occupation, with all the political parties and the fighting between them. So these cracks, I thought they make sense for me. But then after a while, in 1988, I visited my friend Nabil Anani. He's an artist, and I saw that he is doing the same thing without even discussing things with him. But he was doing it. Also, he remembered from his childhood. He's from Hebron area, and there they are famous for the leather. and working with leather. So he was doing his artwork from leather and henna and natural materials. And then we visited another artist, Taysir Barakat. So he was searching for wood, old wood, and burning the wood, and also making natural dyes from rumman, from onions, from whatever. So every artist was trying to do something. And some other artists, they were doing from stone, because stone in the First Intifada became something very important. Yes, because it's the only weapon that we have. And it became very symbolic.
Yeah.
So some artists started to make some sculpture from stone, whatever it is. And but also it changed a lot from even the artists who continued painting. So they used to paint, in a very slow way with lots of details. But during the Intifada, the painting changed. You could see the brush strokes very strong, and strong colors and heavy colors. So everything changed. The Intifada changed it, and I can tell that the effect of the First Intifada, you can only see it on visual art more than anything else, more than poetry, more than anything else. And I'm proud of that, because I feel that I'm a part of that.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the characters in your works. So many of your works feature these intimate moments with people in the middle of the struggle, even if it is somebody in New York City, like this woman in this piece from 2017. For you, when you're painting these intimate sort of portraits of people, do you sort of have a idea of who these people are and what they're going through? Do you have a more holistic experience of who this woman is?
Yes, I and most of my friends, artists living here, we took the figure of the woman as a symbol for homeland, for Palestine, I always try to make it as noble as possible, as beautiful as possible, because it's not a real woman. It's a woman that represents homeland. It represents Palestine, with all the embroidery, with all the traditional things around it, around the figure. So my aim was not to paint a girl or a woman. My aim was to paint Palestine in this situation, and the woman represents Palestine.
I want to ask you about how you feel about your work when you see your work, when you see people posting your work, even from the 70s and 80s and onwards. How does it feel? I mean, when you see that, is the immediate reaction joy, happiness, sadness? Because so much of your work is so sorrowful. When you see somebody else post it, does it make you feel sad or weak or strong? What is the feeling?
Yeah, I would say something about 1975 when we started making posters. I used to go into homes and shops and institutions, and I always saw like the Camel of Hardship hanging there. I felt like I'm welcome there. I felt that this is like my home. I felt, I felt a feeling of being welcome. Now, the people are buying these posters much more than before. Of course, I like that, and the more they buy, it's kind of it's like saying to me that we like what you did, we like what you do, and we feel with you, and that's a nice feeling,
Do you ever?
It's nice, but also it's a kind of it binds me in a way, because sometimes I feel I have to do something else and something new, but I don't have the courage to stop doing these things or to reflecting what my life here.
Yeah.
And it's good feeling and it's nice things, but at the end, it's bounding in a way.
Can I ask about what is it like being an artist now, creating this work? I mean, you're still creating new works. I mean, are you worried about your safety? Are you worried about you're still living under occupation. Are you worried about your ability to actually create this work?
Not really. No, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid about my safety. I passed that moment, maybe, but now I think I'm too famous to get to prison. Even going to prison was part of my fame also, because when I was in prison, all papers they wrote about that, and it became, and even the interrogator he asked me, "Who you think you are? Why everybody is writing about you?" He was angry, But anyway,
he didn't realize that he was helping spread the word.
I think he realized, but he was angry,
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I'm still working, but now I'm very slow.
Yeah.
I had like a stroke some 8 months ago, and I have a problem with my left side of the body.
Alhamdulillah, salama.
And physically, I don't feel okay, and also mentally, I don't have the patience to sit and work, for hours. Maybe
Yeah.
I work for like half an hour and then I stop. I don't like to go on.
Yeah.
But I hope, as everybody tells me, doctors and psychiatrists and so on, that this is a passing moment, that it will pass very quickly. I hope so.
Inshallah.
Because I still have many ideas, nice ideas. I would like to finish them before I stop.
Do you talking to you now, you have such a lightness to you. You're so jolly, and you have a great sense of humor, and you're laughing and smiling the entire time. How do you feel when you're creating these work? Because some of your work, it's so emotional, and it really taps into I feel like the weight of the occupation. Are you able to, how does it actually feel creating this work? Are you emotional while you're doing it? Is it a joyful process, or is it one that's laborious? It's hard to even come up with the emotions.
It's hard to come up with not with the emotions, but to interpret the emotions in a way that are realistic, for the work of art. Because you have idea, you have a lot of details, you have a lot of, and you have to do it, and it's not easy. So many times I have to make sketches like lots of sketches to make a figure, not any figure, but a figure standing in a special way.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to do things, and it takes time. It needs patience, but also, most of all, it needs love. Because if I don't love the subject or the scenery in front of me, it wouldn't come out so nice or so convincing.
Yeah, your work is so poetic and so beautiful, but it's hard. It's definitely sorrowful for sure. What advice would you give to a young artist, a young Palestinian artist now working under occupation? I mean, I'm sure people come to you all the time asking you for advice. What is the advice that you give?
The main advice is that a young artist should feel that he belongs to what he is doing, that it's part of himself. Whatever he's doing, if it is a landscape, or it is a portrait, or it is a subject, or something like this, he should or she should feel that this is part of her culture, part of her life. And without feeling belonging, then artists are lost, because they should, the artists should belong to their childhood, to their memories. They should belong to their culture and to whatever, to their history, to their language, to their whatever. Without feeling belonging, then art is not convincing at all. This is the main thing. The other thing is that artists should be patient, because the painting does not come out always as you imagine it. You paint it and then you don't like it, so you have to do it again and again and again. Sometimes I do it again like 10 times until I'm satisfied with the result. So artists should be patient.
What about
you should keep trying all the time.
Yeah. What about the patience that comes with actual almost like the stamina? I mean, you've been working for so long, and subhanAllah, you still have the energy and the innovation to come up with and you have new messages to say, but that requires like a hopefulness. It requires a belief that the work you're doing matters, and it's hard to believe that. It's hard to keep that belief, especially in the situation that so many artists are in. I mean, what advice would you have for that?
No, I can answer that in a different way.
Yeah.
We discussed that I'm naive. And I said I'm still naive, and not only me. I think most of the Palestinian people are naive, and they still have hope. And that's what makes them still go on living and go on fighting and go on doing things. This hope, and this hope comes out from naivety, as I see it, which is nice, and it's not something bad or something negative. It's something very positive.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. It's faith. That's what it is.
It's faith.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you. do you feel like your work is more accepted and more celebrated today than at any point in your life? And not only your work, Palestinian art more broadly. Do you feel like Palestinian art more broadly is more accepted and celebrated today globally than ever in your lifetime?
Yes, of course. You know, when we used to make an exhibition, for example, in Europe, in Germany,
Yeah.
that was in 88 or 87 or 86. You know, just to have an advertisement in the newspaper, you have enemies and you have friends. You have people who are fighting, who are shouting at you and cursing you and writing bad about you, even without seeing the exhibition.
Yeah.
I mean, being a Palestinian, it attracts a lot of tension. And it's not easy to be a Palestinian, you know.
And for you, it's only gotten easier, you think?
Now it is, you know, with all the new ways of communication.
Yeah.
It's becoming much easier.
Yeah.
People are accepting, you know, at that time also there was this fight, the Cold War fight. And to make anything that is very similar to socialist realist art was considered very, it's bad. It was called propaganda art because of that war, you know.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Now it's a different story. I see it. You know, now even in the West, even in the United States and England, it's not. It's very good to have a painting, you know, a work of art with the concept, with the meaning. And in the 80s and the 70s, it was very bad to have an artwork with a meaning, with a concept. Now it's a different way. People now are looking at art in a different way, and that's why I feel accepted more now.
Yeah, like this piece, The Village Awakens in 1987. I would imagine in the 80s, they think, oh, this is a socialist piece. This is promoting socialism.
Yes, no. They attacked it. They said this is, you know, it promotes. It's not good for the women rights.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm using women too much. You know, like, and the Israelis they thought that this is about bringing more children, and our fight is becoming, you know, how more will become. Although I didn't think about that interpretation, but I heard it from them.
Very interesting. Okay, I want to do the quick Q&A and then we're going to wrap up. So these are 4 quick questions. The first is, what are you reading or watching these days? Are you watching any shows or reading any books?
Yes, I'm reading books. Every night I read like for 1 hour and 1 hour and a half.
Amazing. Any suggestions of books that people should go read?
Maybe I can bring you the book to show it.
Yes, please.
Sorry for that.
No problem.
I'm reading this.
Amazing. So who's the author? Jerusalem, the biography?
Simon Montefiore.
Okay,
He's
amazing.
Israeli, I think. He's Israeli.
Okay,
but it's nice to read about Jerusalem history through Israeli. And cool. Then somebody gave me this book, which is very beautiful and nice. Beautiful. So I'm reading this, and this is too long to read it in a short time.
Okay. From the past, who would you love to shadow? So if you could spend a day with somebody from the past, anyone, who would you love to spend a day with?
As long as I'm reading about Salah ad-Din
Yeah.
in this book, Jerusalem. So he is a very captivating figure.
Yeah, there you go. What do people most misunderstand about your work?
They misunderstand the use of women in my art.
Yeah.
But my art is all, it goes around identity more than anything else. And I think women, they symbolize identity more than anything else.
Yeah.
With their customs, with the handicraft they do in their homes, that they used
Amazing.
to do.
Great.
With the food they make, with the love they give to their children. They really represent identity more than the man.
Amazing.
But many people misunderstand my use for this subject of the woman.
Interesting. Cool. The last question is, if you were to recommend a few artists for people to check out that you think, you admire their work, and they're listening to this podcast and they don't know much about art in the region, who are some artists off the top of your head that you say, these are a few names you should Google right now and you should look them up? Of course.
Some artists are living in camps in Lebanon, like Abdurrahman Katanani. I think he's great. We have also some young artists here in Palestine, especially women artists. They are really great.
Okay. The last question I'm going to ask you before we wrap up is, are you hopeful about the next few decades in the region?
That's very, very heavy question.
Yeah, to end on. It's a heavy question to end on, but are you hopeful?
But I'm hopeful, yes. I'm hopeful because we are too weak. And I'm hopeful because the enemy is too strong. And this formula is catastrophic for both sides. And so I'm optimistic, It will be hard for us, but at the end, I'm optimistic.
Amazing. Sliman, thank you so much for making the time to speak to me, and I really do appreciate you making the time and getting on Zoom, and I love your work and I find so much strength and power in it, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Mikey, and thank you all.